in ecological terms. So we do look at habitat and planetary health, because at the end of the day, healthy planet is healthy people. We recently did a quick Twitter-based survey to ask people how they had used nature to deal with lockdown. And we got some really interesting replies, but mainly it was interpreted of what you can do inside of nature. So people went on walks, they meditated, they ran, they did yoga, they did socializing, and they found that nature was an incredible partner or an incredible friend, even in their coping of COVID. But there's also other hidden things about nature that we may not necessarily be aware of. One of them is that nature contributes to our microbiome health. So that's our gut bacteria. And what we're starting to learn is that our gut actually is almost like a second brain. It governs a lot of our systems. And so when we're walking around nature, we are ingesting bacteria and enzymes that end up contributing to our gut health, which in turn makes communication to our endocrine, immune, digestion system, and therefore contributes to our overall health. The second thing is more on what it does to our brain. So there are 3 different types of attention systems. One of them is sustained attention. So that's when you're really focusing on a task at hand. It's quite taxing. So for example, a Zoom call, what I'm doing right now, requires sustained attention, and it can be very taxing on the brain. But when we're in nature, because it's orchestrated, it does have a lot of different sensorial activities happening, or stimuli, from the noises, the colors, the smells, but it's all orchestrated in one way that our brain can really digest it, and digest it very simply. And so what that ends up happening is that our brain doesn't actually have to sustain at that task. It can wonder, it can move to different thoughts in different places and focus on different things. And that actually causes a relaxation effect. So in terms of our stress response, it reduces cortisol, it reduces other adrenals that allow our bodies to come back to stability, and it also lowers depression symptoms and anxiety symptoms. So the combination of those 2 things, of what it does to our body physiologically, biologically, and mentally, really puts the focus that nature is an incredible part of us as humans. We're not separated from it, and it provides us with incredible gifts. So 3 things from that is that nature is a biological necessity for human health, quality of life, and dignity. Nature is sacred because it does provide us with that protection, and it also heals us and makes us feel good. It nourishes us, and it gives us clean air and clean water. And then finally, Professor Kimmerer then talks about, who is an environmentalist and a botanist and part of the Paraguay people. She mentions that we have to then gift back. So if nature gives us so much, then what is our gift back to nature? What is our reciprocity back to nature? So that is what I want to leave you with, is what is your gift back to the nature around you, both on a daily basis or on a macro activist basis. What are you going to do to give back to a being that gives us so much? Okay, that's it.
Thank you very much. Great timing as well. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. It's such an important conversation for all of us to have, and also we need to share this information far and wide, so that we all understand why we need to be more connected with nature. Thank you very much, Araceli. We will now move on to our next speaker. We're going to Iceland. So Snorri, over to you. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Good morning, or good afternoon, actually. Very happy to be with you. I work for the city of Reykjavík in Iceland, and the city approved its first biodiversity strategy just under 5 years ago. And as we are now facing a global biodiversity crisis, ensuring the delivery of key messages to all relevant audiences is crucial. And that's why raising awareness about the value of biodiversity is a key attribute of our strategy. And in our view, children are a particularly important group to engage with, as we have so well seen, informed youth and can have a huge impact on the environmental debate, both locally and globally. So that's part of our strategy is to organize many educational events for children, both in primary schools and kindergartens, with special emphasis on local neighborhood biodiversity as a topic. As time is limited, I want to focus on one particular kindergarten project the city organized a few years ago called the Neighborhood Bird. All kindergartens in the city were invited to join, and about 40% of them did, which was fantastic. The premise was simple and involved three main tasks. First, that the children would get to know the local bird fauna by spending time outdoors in nearby green spaces and natural areas. Learn a little bit about them. What are their names? What are their characteristics? What do they eat? Do they migrate? And what do they mean to us? And so on. And as you can see in these photos, it turns out if you make your own binoculars, you can see them much better. Next slide, please. Secondly, the children chose together one species as their neighborhood bird. And we saw some very fun ways that the kindergartens aimed at a truly democratic approach to do this by imitating classical election settings like the voting booth, as you can see here. Next slide, please. Lastly, the kindergartens worked in a creative manner with the chosen bird in any way they wanted to. And the results of that creative process were, as you can imagine, highly diverse. And they were displayed in a communal exhibition at the end of the project, which was a lot of fun. You can see some creations there. Most importantly, the end result and impact of this project was that a large majority of the kindergartens that participated expressed that they'd become more confident in engaging with and utilizing the green areas and nature sites in their neighborhoods. And many of them continued with this project independently or expanded into similar ones. There was also a noticeable increase in knowledge, awareness, and sense of value for birds among the children. In one particular kindergarten, the kids learned to identify over 50 native birds by name. Remember, these are 3 to 5-year-olds, which was something most of the parents were far from being able to. And a noticeable bird craze took hold in the city, and it was very rewarding to witness. And here in this last photo, you can see the bird that was the most popular neighborhood bird got the most overall votes, which was the raven, a striking bird that's actually quite common within the city, particularly during the winter, and is always a cause of wonder. So with that, thanks for your attention. Looking forward to hearing the other talks.
Thank you so much, Snorri, and thank you so much for sharing your great work and beautiful photos. I really enjoyed your talk. We are now moving on to India. So we will hear from Mohammed on native species and sparrows. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask Elise, if you are on, please use the put your hand function so we can promote you as a panelist. So now, Mohammed, over to you. We will be asking to unmute yourself now.
I would like to share my screen. Hello?
Sure, I'll just give you the permission now.
Yeah. Thanks a lot to everyone for inviting us to this wonderful webinar. So Nature Forever Society has been basically working for house sparrow conservation in India for the last 15 years. And we are working practically in more than 50 countries now through the World Sparrow Day campaign, which we initiated in 2010. Now, while working for house sparrow conservation, we spent the first initial 5 to 8 years basically in creating primary habitat like nesting sites, feeding sites by putting millions of nest boxes and bird feeders across the country. But it was much more important to establish the primary habitat for long-term conservation of not only sparrows, but biodiversity in general. So we have been working for saving the native plants in India for the past few years. Because what has happened in India is a large-scale non-native plantation has been undertaken by the government authorities and other things. So over the past 5 to 6 years, we have started an Adopt Native Tree campaign across the country, where we now intend to plant more than 1 million native plants in different parts of the country by involving various agencies, primarily all the large landholders in the country. So what we have actually done is, because space is a constraint, we have started developing high density city forest, where in around 3,000 square feet or 2,000 square feet, more than 1,200 plants are planted. And apart from that, we are also creating nectar gardens for birds. We are trying to revive the secret forest things in India. So our main aim is to involve citizens across the country, basically create baseline habitats. Because once you start getting native plants, the insects which come on the native plants, that will act as a source of food for sparrows during the initial stage. And what we believe is, sparrow is like an umbrella species basically for urban conservation. So once you save sparrows, you will end up saving a lot of other micro flora and fauna across the country. So that is basically what we are trying to do. We have also created a native plant research and conservation center, where we are presently working on more than 350 species of native Indian plants. A lot of these plants are critically endangered. They are very difficult to save, but that is exactly what we are trying to do. So I would like to end my session and once again thank the organization for inviting us for this wonderful session. Any information that you require from us, you can always mail us at info@natureforever.org.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, and thank you so much for all the work you're doing in India. It's been amazing to hear about your work. Now we are going to the US. So we will hear from Julia Murphy, and she will talk about biodiversity without borders. Julia, I will ask you to unmute yourself now. And over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Julia Murphy, and I'm the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of San Antonio. Today, I'm going to tell you about a project that we just announced 2 days ago, and it is a show of trinational support for biodiversity and access to nature, featuring projects from San Antonio, Montreal, and Guadalajara. Next slide, please. Thank you. And this project that we're announcing is the North American Friendship Garden. The reason why we are putting it in San Antonio, Texas, is if you can see on the map to the left, you see the outline of Texas in red there, right in the middle of the Central Flyway, which is a phenomenon of stretching 5,000 miles across Central, South, and North America up into Canada. And it's used by hundreds of birds, butterflies, and other migratory species at least twice each year. The North American Friendship Garden is to be located on the banks of the San Antonio River, announced just 2 days ago, and it will be a space for native plants and pollinators and other wildlife that need to rest and refuel during their migratory journeys. The symbolic garden represents combined commitments of local governments in Canada, Mexico, and the United States to support urban biodiversity and access to nature for residents who also can amplify these efforts. And I wanted to say that our 3 cities have come together because of UNESCO World Heritage designations. And we have all committed to the commitments in cities with nature as well. And so on the following slides, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that our 3 cities independently are doing to connect together to make this a trinational partnership. So in San Antonio, there's a list of a multitude of projects that we have ongoing. We have a really long legacy of conservation in the urban core. We've established the Alamo Area Monarch Collaborative, which is a group of organizations that have pledged together to meet goals of the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. We host an annual Monarch Festival. We've preserved the Bracken Bat Cave, which is a couple of thousand acres of natural habitat that supports migratory Mexican free-tailed bats that come to San Antonio in the summer and go back to Mexico in the winter. We've also conserved land over our aquifer, which is the primary drinking source for millions of residents around the San Antonio area. We've done improvements along our river to return it back to its native habitat. We have an extensive trail system that people use all over town. We have a statewide Audubon Center in town that's a wonderful educational center and natural habitat for migratory species as well. And again, we are the home of the San Antonio Missions National Historical Park, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Next slide, please. In Guadalajara, we were excited to hear about all of their projects going along. They have been designated a tree city of the world, Ciudad Arbal. They've also initiated a project called Cento Parques, green corridors. And to loop all of this together, they have a policy called Conectando con Alas. We are all connected. So it's inspiring to learn that Guadalajara has recognized that both the native plant and animal species that grace their city add so much to their quality of life that they are doing everything that they can to protect and enhance those habitats. Next slide, please. In Montreal has so much going on. I just had a few things that are related to pollinators to highlight on this slide. They were I think the very first city that signed on to Cities with Nature, and their mayor is heading up that initiative internationally. But they also are the home of the Insectarium, which has spearheaded a number of projects specifically to support pollinators and migratory monarchs. Mission Monarch is a citizen science program. They also host an annual fiesta to raise awareness. And they have a program for residents to invest in their own space at home called My Space for Life Garden. Next slide, please. That's all. I'm going to wrap up here, but I did want to thank the cities who have contributed to this effort that will be placed in San Antonio. We will be planting this spring when the weather is more favorable for the plants to take off. But please watch for more news about all of the work that our cities are doing across North America to stitch together habitat that knows no borders for the migratory species that grace our world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. And yes, our biodiversity doesn't have borders, so it's very important to continue the work you're doing. So thank you very much. We actually ran an event this week on green corridors as well, because we think they're very important for our cities. We're now going to Netherlands. So we will be hearing from Joop. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I haven't, please correct myself. And we will hear about the Green for Great project. I will ask you to unmute yourself now. So I'm just pressing on unmute and you just have to press, yes, perfect.
Okay.
Over to you.
You pronounce my name as Joop, so.
Joop.
For next time. Let's start with hello voices around the world. Making cities greener and healthier is the theme of today, but it's exactly the aim of the Nature for Health Foundation, founded in 2013 in the Netherlands, of which I am a member of the board. Last October 7, so just recently, Nature for Health hosted an International Healing Landscape Day. A day in what is to become the Van Gogh National Park in the province of Brabant in the Netherlands, named after the worldwide famous Dutch painter Vincent van Gogh. A new national park that is to be established by the Dutch government next year in 2021. I hope so, because we're still in negotiation. And this new Van Gogh National Park is not a national park bordering cities and villages. On the opposite, it encloses cities and villages as a part of the national park. precisely to make the cities and villages greener and healthier. And this is reflected in the name of the new national park, because the painter Van Gogh not only loved the landscape, but also suffered from depression and anxiety and needed nature for his mental health. For us, he symbolizes the relationship between nature and health. How do we make this relationship between nature and health work? In 2015, we, together with 2 Dutch universities, did research on how nature positively can affect the quality of life of people suffering from dementia. It's a terrible disease that affects the brain and for which there is as yet no cure. Being one of the greatest societal challenges in Europe, having over 7 million people suffering from dementia. But the research showed that contact with nature can substantially improve the quality of life of people suffering from dementia. The research was published in Psychogeriatrics International, being the first scientific article on dementia and nature. It earned us in 2015 as Nature for Health a nomination for the International Dementia Awards category Dementia Design Innovation of the Year. And that is precisely what we have done in homes for the elderly and hospitals, redesigning their outside space in so-called dementia gardens. We then broadened this research in my hometown, Oosterwijk, that lies within the Van Gogh National Park, to not only dementia, but also mental problems regarding depression and loneliness in a 5-year research project called Green for Grey, and grey referring to fragile elderly people. In the scientific results, surprisingly, one thing stood out. Greening their immediate living surroundings made fragile elderly people feel safer, because the involvement of all the inhabitants in greening their neighborhood in planting days did wonders for the social cohesion in the neighborhood. Young and old, on their knees next to each other and having their fingers in the soil together, planting thousands of flowers and herbs, literally created a grassroots feeling of togetherness. Important in this project was the role of the so-called biodiversity team in my hometown, a group of volunteers that works on more biodiversity and awareness of the benefits of biodiversity. Inhabitants of Oosterwijk call it the B team. But even the inhabitants of a nearby center for political refugees assisted in planting. The fire department assisted in watering the thousands of plants, with the children dancing through the water beams. The Green for Grey project was highlighted in the Healing Landscape Day on October 7, that had contributions from the World Health Organization, European Union, Europarks, and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And everybody was inspired. The Healing Landscape Day resulted in a Van Gogh Healing Landscape Declaration, and I hope this voice from the Netherlands has also inspired you. And I will send the Van Gogh Healing Landscapes Declaration to you through National Park City Movement. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Joost. And there's someone definitely was asking for that as well. So if you can share any relevant links in the chat, it would be very helpful for us. We will now move on to Romania. So we will hear from Marius. I also wanted to remind you, if you have any questions for the speakers, please put them in the Q&A, as we will take a break very soon. Keep the lovely comments coming as well. We love seeing a good chat. So Marius, over to you. We will ask you to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and it's glad to be here around so many active people around the subject of nature and bringing it back to our lives. I will share the screen now. It's all right. I will present shortly my project that I started in 2015. It's called Someș Delivery. It's about bringing the river back to the consciousness of the city and more closer to the people. We live in a city that is actually quite open, but still the administration at that time had a policy about opening towards the river, but they actually made no steps towards this goal. So we started this project then with the idea of bringing people closer to the water. Our first edition in 2015 was actually a great success, and we had participants that built and we promote those and finance those interventions, and they were building different types of ideas about how you can improve the situation by the river. And this is called Someș, one of the interventions there that we did at that time. It was a huge success, and after the event we left it for a few months and the people still used it. It was the idea of having an alley at the level of the river on a very narrow river bank, where you cannot do much more than this. The surprise was that after a few months, they started to dig exactly the same place. So this drew attention, everybody, what is going on? It was a narrow place, green place, let's have a protest, and we managed to do a protest. We managed to have public discussions on this narrowing of the green space, which is already narrow, and making room for another lane of traffic. So we somehow succeeded. The next year, we actually closed a project from the town hall that they wanted to enlarge the city, the street to cars. So we stopped it, and they didn't. Next year, we made this possible again, this alley, this experiment. We have also small interventions that renaming some bridges. Also little space, public space, we managed to conquer. This was a sidewalk but that was never used. It was kept the right side. It was kept for infrastructure that actually they managed to build on the other side. So we managed to set free this sidewalk and now it can be used, and everybody can look at the water, because on the left sidewalk you could never see the water while traversing the bridge. We had partners with universities. We managed to open places where you can never get before. We managed to enter at the level of water where it's forbidden, also here, and try new connections in the city. We managed to use the water in different ways that were never used for 30 years or more. Other interventions that was solving problems on the way. We had a newspaper that we tried to get along and communicate with the people that are living by and draw their interviews and the information that we get from them in the newspaper and spread it. We also have a strategy of cleaning, and the strategy of cleaning led to later to some debates, and also to some projects, musical projects. And of course, we had a strategy of cleaning the whole city, the whole river, because up the stream there are there is a lot of trash, and we started also a campaign of cleaning all these places above the river. And I will stop here because I passed my time, and I wanted to say more, but I will stop. The important thing is that we will continue this process and try to clean the river, because the first step in getting more ecological is cleaning the river, which is very dirty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marius. This is really inspiring. I think a few people have commented Love the river takeover. This is brilliant, Marius. Wow, inspiring. So thank you very much for your great work. I just wanted to let the panelists know that you can either message all the panelists or all the panelists and attendees. So it might be nice to share some of your comments with all the participants. We will now move on to Croatia. And I wanted to invite Iva next, who will talk to us about nature-based solutions. So Iva, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now. Over to you.
Hello. Okay, here's my presentation. Hello, everybody. So as time is short, I will get right to the point. The city of Zagreb is cooperating with the cities of Torino, Dortmund, and Chinese city Ningbo on the project called ProGI-REG. It's a productive green infrastructure for post-industrial urban regeneration. It's funded by Horizon 2020 program, and it explores the benefits of nature-based solutions in former industrial areas and what it brings to communities. So next slide, please. Next one, please. So here are the cities, Dortmund, Torino, Zagreb, and Ningbo, and follower cities are Cluj-Napoca, Zenica, Piraeus, and Cascais. So next one, please. So the city of Zagreb is a middle-sized Southern European capital, and the project is focusing on a former meat processing factory in the eastern neighborhood of Sesvete. So the left red cross is the city center, the right one is where the project is being implemented. Sesvete is the largest neighborhood in Zagreb. It covers 1/4 of the city area. It's 10 kilometers from the center, and it has the youngest population in the city with an average age of 38 years. So next, please. So the nature-based solutions are expected to improve living conditions and inclusion of vulnerable groups, to reduce vulnerability to climate change, and to create measurable economic benefits. About Zagreb Living Lab in Sesvete. I'm just going to tell you in short the most important things that we are doing in Zagreb. So first of all, we are modernizing an existing city garden. You can see to the top left photo with solar water pumps and groundwater purification installation. To the right, you can see the design for the new therapy garden, which will be built next to the former factory and will provide opportunity for therapeutic gardening for people with physical and mental disabilities who live nearby, but also in other parts of town. For example, there are several residential communities of autistic people very close by who will be users of the therapeutic garden. So next one, please. Another feature of the project will be a mini urban farm which will combine aquaponics and green roofs and walls in Sesvete. This mini farm will have both commercial and educational functions, with the basic components are 2 equal small-scale units which will be made of ship containers, and it will feature pilot green roof, part of green wall, aquaponic system located in one unit, and a plant growth system which will be in the next one, in the other one. Next slide, please. So other NBS that we are going to implement include a new bike path which will connect a part of the city, a remote residential neighborhood, to the center of Sesvete, and also new protocols for changes in regulation that should facilitate and encourage NBS in the city. So next one, please. So important thing is to stress that the nature-based solutions are planned and implementing following the principles of co-design, which means that the public and relevant stakeholders are included in every step of the project. So you can see the photos of some of the meetings. So next slide, and that would be all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Iva. And again, thank you so much for the inspirational work you're doing. It's amazing to see all sorts of solutions in different cities. And we've been traveling today to different places. So we are now going to land to South Africa. And we're going to hear from Joe on expanding river management to urban areas. So Joe, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. And now over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Joe from Durban, and I'm going to just share very briefly with you around some of the work that we're doing to try and upscale our management of rivers in the urban area. Next slide, please. And really some of the work that we're doing in this space is in response to the challenge of climate change. And so some of the challenges that Durban will face going forward under climate change are higher temperatures. We're expecting conditions to become a lot wetter, to experience more variability in rainfall and increased storm intensity. And so some of the impacts that flow from that are increased flooding and reduced water quality. Next slide, please. And so one of the challenges with that is that in our city, we have a lot of informal settlements. We have a lot of settlement generally spread out along our river banks. And so when it floods, a lot of the alien vegetation, a lot of the solid waste that's lying alongside our rivers flows directly into those. And what happens is that it clogs up stormwater systems, it clogs up drains, and it makes the flooding a lot worse. It also causes a lot of damage to infrastructure, to our roads, to our stormwater systems, and you can get a sense of that in the bottom right picture. And one of the big concerns for us is that climate change will make that situation worse. And we often have a lot of very vulnerable communities living alongside our rivers. Next slide, please. And so one of the programs that's being run by the city, and interestingly, it's being run out of the engineering unit. I work for local government. And so it's quite surprising to sometimes hear about environmental programs being run from an engineering function, is a river management program called Sihlanzimvelo. And it's really been established around this challenge of trying to address the issues of waste management and invasive alien plants in and alongside our rivers. And so what it does is to employ local community cooperatives, so people living from the adjacent communities, to manage 5 kilometers of streams. So they're responsible for removing litter, they're responsible for removing invasive alien plants, and they're also responsible for monitoring what's happening along our rivers. Sometimes we have sewer pipes that are overflowing, and so they play a watchful role along our rivers. And this program delivers a whole range of benefits. So not only does it help with stormwater management and reducing stream pollution, but you can see in the bottom right-hand picture, it brings back a lot of biodiversity into our riverine corridors and improves river health. And that comes with a whole lot of community benefits as well. Not only improved health, but also recreational opportunities, opportunities for job creation, which in the South African context is really important, but also with climate change adaptation. So really trying to reduce the negative impacts associated with flooding. And so what Durban is currently doing is working towards building a business case for expanding river management. So what that means is we need to be able to articulate the benefits to our city leadership around what it means to invest in our rivers and the many benefits that flow from that, so that we can generate more finance to put back into river management. And so currently Durban is working with the C40 Cities Finance Facility to begin to articulate and also to quantify some of those benefits, and they are multiple. A lot of the benefits relate to avoided costs. So our municipal officials get fewer call-outs to address blocked stormwater systems, there's less damage to infrastructure, and we spend less money on addressing community health issues. So we want to try and quantify those benefits and really make the case for upscaling river management. We're intending to try and source funding both from the municipality. We already have a fairly extensive river management program, but to expand that and also to use that business case to motivate for additional external funding. and look for opportunities also to partner not only with business but also with civil society organizations who are also very committed to river management. And a really important part of this is trying to embed river management as a key part of asset management in the city. As local governments, we often think about assets in terms of our roads and our bridges, and we need to start seeing our natural environment as part of that critical asset. As you've all emphasized, it's so critical and foundational to our health, to our well-being, and we need to start seeing that as an asset in how we manage our cities. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Jo. Thank you very much for your talk. I can see that not many questions have been coming for our speakers. We had one for Mohammed, but unfortunately he had to leave. It's quite late in India at the moment. But we can continue with our next speaker, and then please, if you have any questions to any of our panelists, I'm sure there are loads of curiosities out there, so feel free to write down your questions. So now we will move on to the Netherlands, and we will be hearing from Lucy. And Lucy, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now.
Yes, I am Lucy Bathgate from the Spoorpark in Tilburg. And we are also part of the Van Gogh National Park in the south of the Netherlands. And here you see our park, a green lung where everyone can be outside. With the first streaming water since about 70 years in our town. It's mainly collected rainwater with a little water from the earth. And I'm so happy to see all the children play in it. And we keep it safe and clean with plants, plant beds, halophyte filter, and light, so no chemicals, and with volunteers and an expert network. And how did we start? There was an empty space near the center of town. Many plants came, nothing happened for years. Then an independent steering group, 3 people, they asked license to act from the municipality, and they got it. They published clear rules and organized an open call. And rule number 1 was, if you have an idea, you have to make it yourself. 82 ideas applied. 8 were chosen. Also my plan for living water. The 8 dreams came together. And they make 1 park. And we got help with the realization. 3 advisors for developing our business skills. A landscape architect designed together with us the park. We gathered 3 million euros, private money, and went as a citizen initiative to the local council and asked 5 million. And they said yes. So we had 8 million. And then 17 months of building followed. We invited all the neighbors 10 times in a meeting to inform them what was happening in their backyard and listen to them. We got 0 complaints getting the environmental permits. And now we are open since 1 year for all generations, all cultures, all kinds of activities, also problems of all kinds. But we have our park manager, our steering board, and the 8 park partners, and many, many volunteers to maintain it in an open connection to the municipality and neighborhood. The keys for success: an independent steering group, rules in advance, everyone can apply, make it yourself, a municipality that dare to sit on the hands and give citizens the space, and we keep it proper, safe and clean together. So, and this is the last slide, follow your dreams. You can certainly try this at home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. 3 minutes sharp. Great timing. We will now move on to Canada, to the city of Calgary, to find out more about their bees. So, Laura, over to you. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself.
There we go. My name is Laura, and I am in Calgary, Canada, and with Calgary Parks. City of Calgary made a commitment to be a bee city this year, and as part of that, we provide education on pollinators, everything about pollinators and how to appreciate pollinators. 2020 certainly derailed all of our plans, but in some cases, it actually provided more opportunity to get some different things done. So next slide, please. One thing that we did do is launch our website, which everybody was all of a sudden online. So it was actually pretty easy to get a website going really quick, and it attracted a lot of attention. So calgary.ca/pollinators has everything you want to know about a pollinator, how to help a pollinator, and there's even some kids activities as well. So next slide, please. The other thing that COVID meant is everybody was staying home and gardening. And one thing we want to do was a wildflower seed giveaway where we would just mail a seed package and with some instructions and get people to plant. And we were thinking ambitiously, maybe we can get 5,000 seed packets out to the citizens of Calgary. We have a population of about 1.3 million. And we just did one social media post and it went viral. We ended up mailing out to 20,000 separate addresses. Our postage costs alone were over 30 grand. But it was fantastic. And it really showed that people were very interested in helping our little bees and all of our little pollinators. So it was really good. So next slide, please. Another thing we wanted to do is we have a lot of areas where we are doing habitat restoration, and residents will often complain, this area is overgrown, there's a bunch of weeds, you're not taking care of it. And we get a lot of calls about that. So what we did is we have some large metal buoys. They're actually old water buoys that we painted and we repurposed, we recycled. And so we put them in the park and we put some signage beside it. And so people are like, oh, that park's overgrown. And then they'll go up and they'll see the bee and go, what the heck is this? And they'll read the sign and then they understood. So we've got a few less calls. There was one funny thing though, I couldn't find the post. Somebody did take a picture and went, is this the beginning of the murder hornets or something like that? It was quite funny. So, but this campaign has been really good. Lots of popularity. People love the kids love it and everything. So it's a great way to just do subtle education. Next slide, please. And then finally, just recently we did Be Ready for Winter. So we put a bunch of different ideas on our website on how you can be helpful to pollinators as winter approaches. We got people just to comment or send a picture on how they are helping pollinators this winter. And my favorite comment, if you can read it really quick, is over on the right there. This person loves the bees so much they want to name them. So we got about 60 entries, which doesn't seem that much, but we only had it open for a week. We learned from the seed giveaway. So we only had it open for a week and we still got 30,000 hits. So that was kind of good as well. Next slide. And I just want to end on what we have planned for 2021, and it's really ambitious. I don't know if we'll be able to do these, but I wanted to share the ideas. After the seed giveaway, we realized people wanted to help. So we're exploring, could we possibly do very small wildflower or naturalized areas within our manicured spaces that would then be maintained by volunteers? Because they'd be small, it would be hard to maintain, but maybe with volunteers we can do it. I can see lots of barriers to that, but we're going to give it a shot. And then a bigger project is we want to encourage homeowners to do some naturalization in their own yards and possibly even create some kind of a designation program. We don't know what that would look like. We knew it would have to involve education first, then they would have to do something in their yard, and then maybe they get a proud sign, you know, I'm a bee-friendly yard or something to that effect. So again, I can see lots of barriers to that, but we're going to give it a shot. I've got my email address and everything if people want more information, and thank you so much to everybody else for all their presentations. It's been a great morning so far. Morning for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Laura. Great work to support the bees. We had a comment from Jane Miller saying, so great to hear about work supporting nature and biodiversity happening in cities around the world. It gives me hope. So that's really nice to read. We're now going to move on to our next speaker, Patricia. So we're going all the way to Spain in Barcelona. Patricia, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Patricia. I work at Barcelona Metropolitan Area, AMB. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share our experience related to naturalization and education, planning and nature-based solution. AMB has established as a general principle the need to understand the uniqueness of our green infrastructure, especially its functional and structural potential. In this sense, there is a commitment to consider all green and agroforest space as a unitary system. As for nature-based solution, the strategy is to prioritize all these actions inspired, based or copy from nature, with use or improve existing solutions to face various environmental, social and economic challenges in a sustainable and efficient manner. This presentation focuses on 3 innovative planning and design projects by the Barcelona Metropolitan Area. Currently underway in 3 major open space, the Biodiversity Refuge in the Besòs River, the Special Plan for the Serra de Collserola Natural Park, PEPNAT, and the H2020 Clearinghouse Project in the Llobregat River. Next, please. Besòs River is situated in the northeast of Barcelona metropolitan area. The last 5 kilometers of the river area are designed for public use. At the end of this public space, a biodiversity refuge has been planned, with a welcome area devoted to environmental education. In this manner, the next 15 hectares of the river terrace, with visitors will not be allowed to enter, is going to include action to increase and preserve the complexity of biological process. Next, please. Next, sorry. No. Thank you. Serra de Collserola Natural Park, a forest park of over 800 hectares, is situated at the center of AMB. The Special Preservation Plan, the PEPNAT, defines a model based on 2 fundamental aims: the preservation of biodiversity and the enhancement of ecosystem service in the framework of a dynamic and adaptable management. The plan defines a specific regulation for ecological connectivity areas and quad areas with restricted public use, and guidelines and recommendations in the pre-park area or buffer space called functional space. This plan is in the final stage of its final approval. Next, please. Last, given his relevant role in the metropolitan green infrastructure, AMB has chosen the Llobregat River as a case study for Clearinghouse project. The main objective of Clearinghouse is to analyze and develop across China and Europe the potential of urban forests as a nature-based solutions for enhancing the resilience of cities facing major ecological, socioeconomic and human well-being challenges. This project is currently underway as well. It started in September 2019 and it will finish in August 2023. Please keep tour for this and other projects related to NBS in the Barcelona metropolitan area. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Patricia, for your presentation. We are now going back to the Netherlands, and we're going to hear from Dan about tiny forests everywhere. Over to you, Dan. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. I'm Dan. You're going to show my slides, right? All right, so for the past few years, we've been planting about 100 tiny forests in the Netherlands, and we are branching out to England, Belgium, and the rest of Europe. And I believe that every kid or every person growing up in the city should have their very own tiny forest. So why should every kid in the world have its own tiny forest in their neighborhood? So next slide, please. Well, to answer this question, I'm going to start with my favorite cartoon character. It's Obelix. And as a baby, he fell into a cauldron full of magic potion. And next slide, please. And because he fell into the magic potion, he had superpowers for the rest of his life. He had superhuman strength. He could defeat an entire legion by himself. So why do I tell you this little story about the Obelix, the cartoon character? Well, because nature basically has the same effect as a magic potion. A growing body of research shows that kids who spend a lot of time in nature at a young age grow up to be healthy, happy, and creative adults. And furthermore, they are more likely to protect and restore nature. So I believe we could use a generation of kids like this. Next slide, please. But unfortunately, more than half of the world's population grow up in places like this. Dense urban areas far away from nature. And the UN expects this percentage of people to rise to 75% in 2050. So how do we connect a growing urban population? How do we connect a generation of city dwellers to nature? Well, the answer to that question came from an industrial engineer from India. And in his TED Talk, he shows within a 5-minute TED Talk how you can convert any space of land, whether it's a parking spot or a desert, into a dense natural forest that's thriving with life. And I instantly fell in love with this idea, and I reached out to Shubendu. And about a year later, we planted our very first tiny forest right here. You can see it behind the fencing. And after 3 years, it looks like this. Next slide, please. So as you can see, it's a very dense, wild, native place. So how do we use these forests to connect young people, to connect kids to nature? We do that by, next slide, please, our Tiny Forest Ranger program, because we firmly believe that if kids, next slide, learn to design and to plant their very own forests, next slide, if kids learn how to maintain the forest and watch the trees grow. Next slide. And the kids in the tiny forest monitor the growth of the forest, they monitor the biodiversity, and they monitor all the other effects a forest has. They study the soil, and furthermore, they use the forest as an outdoor classroom. We believe by letting these kids be the tiny forest ranger, and by letting them plant the forest, design the forest, maintain the forest, and following lessons outdoor, we can grow a generation of green superheroes. And these kids will help to restore the nature to its former glory. So that's our way of reconnecting urban kids to nature. If you want to learn more, here's our website. So please check it out and join us in planting more and more tiny forests.
Thank you so much, Dan, to many, many tiny forests everywhere in the world. We are now going to move on to our next speaker, Carleen, who will talk about community-led regeneration in vacant and derelict spaces. So Carleen, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Okay, so 3 months ago, I had the joy of starting a new project, which is looking to support communities to regenerate vacant and derelict sites that are local to them. The project is a partnership between the DTAS, which is a community-led regeneration network in Scotland, and the Scottish Land Commission. What you're seeing on the map here is the map of the long-term vacant and derelict sites in Scotland. We've got around 11,000 hectares of vacant and derelict land, which obviously we really want to do something with. And what that means is that about a third of the population lives within 500 metres of a site. And with that comes lots of different associated harms. So if you'd be able to move on to the next slide, please. I'm supporting communities across Scotland, but there are two that are based in Glasgow, and their activities really do support the vision of the Glasgow National Park movement to have a greener, wilder, healthier city. Concrete Garden in the north of the city is based in Postle Park, which has a long history of a lot of vacant and derelict land, post-industrial area. It's also one of the top 10 most deprived areas in Scotland. South Seeds in the south of the city is in one of the most densely populated areas in Scotland and also one of the top 10 most deprived areas. Be able to move on to, the site that South Seeds looking at in the south of the city is nestled within a much loved local park. It's the site, you can see the building there, it's the site of an old changing rooms, which used to be used for locals playing football, and it's been left derelict for quite a number of decades and has really fallen into disrepair, and people really want something to be done with the site locally. So South Seeds are an organisation that support people to live more sustainable lives, and they do this through lots of different programmes. They'd really like to turn this site into a community garden, but also have an outdoor socialising space where training and low carbon lives can be had. And it will really be an engagement space to expand outreach of their programmes, because people will be walking past this site and would engage that wouldn't normally be engaging. Thanks. And the concrete garden in the north of the city, they have a great outdoor wild play space area, but it's in really high demand at the minute. It's so popular. On the map, you'll see the site that we're looking at, and surrounding that looks like there's lots of open space, other derelict sites, but these sites are actually all being turned into housing at the minute. So the demand for their services is just going to go up. So with that big site, that's what we want to do. We want to create it into a great wild outdoor play area. My email address is on the first slide if anyone wanted to get in touch.
Thank you very much, Carleen. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to our next speaker, Leticia. So Leticia, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself now.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Leticia Lozano. I'm speaking from Mexico City. I'm going to try to share my screen if I'm allowed.
You should be allowed to do that now.
Great. Thank you very much. Are you able to check my slides there?
Yes, perfect.
Right. As I said, I'm saying hello from Mexico City, so it's an early-ish morning here. Thank you for welcoming, and it's been amazing to be hearing everyone. So I'll be speaking about a project that's called Urban Auscultations, but I'll be telling you how we arrived to that point. So I am the co-founder and director of Masia Studio, an architecture studio based in Mexico City, where we're trying to create more child-friendly cities, basically. And why are we trying to do that? Because Mexico City looks like this, waves and waves of concrete, where you think that children might not have a space, and they actually don't. And then they are being pushed into the inside. But then the whole point of this is it's a quarter of the population that is being pushed inside, and it's not allowed to be part of public life in the cities. And this number rises to almost 5 million children in the metropolitan area in Mexico City. So that's a lot of people. Our challenges, children's challenges and play challenges are in three ways: the socio-cultural challenges, the insecurity and violence challenges, and the legislative challenges. That has led us to have spaces like this in Mexico City, where no one really wants to go and play or enjoy themselves outside. They are really poorly designed, they have tons of restrictions. So we believe that running an architecture studio in Mexico City in this context where children are not allowed by the city to be outside, we make a political statement. So we do spaces, experiences, and research. So we play a lot outside with different communities. We try to create spaces for children to be able to go outside and enjoy themselves and just be children for at least a couple of hours of the day. We create play agendas with other cities as well. Then we create co-design workshops. We create participatory process with children until they are transforming their surroundings. So then as an architecture studio, we also do this type of spaces, this type of playful spaces, but we do research. And the Urban Auscultations project, it's putting that research into one space and creating a space for projects that are in the Mexican context, that are taking children into account, that are taking nature into account and everything that surrounds them. So we want to celebrate those practices that are creating these spaces, not just us, but also being all together. We've developed a system of 36 categories that we think the architects and designers need to be taking into account when facing the challenge of designing a child-friendly and playful space. So if you want to know more, visit them, come to see our map and see how Mexican architects are doing great spaces for children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Great energy. We had a few comments for you in the chat section as well, so feel free to read through. We're now going to go to Kenya. I'm going to invite Sam. He will be the next speaker. I will ask you to unmute yourself now.
Thank you so much, Flori. And hi, everyone. So my name is Sam Talam. I'm social entrepreneur and global youth leader, Cities Rise, Nairobi. I currently live in Nairobi, Kenya. And I grew up in Kitale, an agricultural town, Northern Rift Valley, Kenya. Mental health was not a topic spoken about in my family. And there was a culture that we do not talk about mental health in my community because it was not understood. In 2014, I moved to Nairobi for university. And the university created a lot of new set of challenges for me in life. And the biggest challenge I faced was transitioning socially and psychologically to a new environment with new pressure. Also, the following year, I lost a close friend to suicide. I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing, but this was a problem in the university setting. There were many suicide cases in the universities in Nairobi and all across the country. Having a lived experience and continuing to struggle with my own mental health and continuing and connecting with the pain of the many young people who die by suicide, I knew that something needed to change. So I created Amazing Minds, which is a network of youth leaders with the goal of creating safe spaces around mental health issues. We have been creating this through theater and art, infusing fun and mental health, creating a new language, sharing stories and giving a voice to emotions that were not accepted and or understood before. In 2017, I connected with an organization called Cities Rise that focuses on amplifying youth voices around mental health. This allowed me to expand my work even further beyond university and to connect with other young people in my city, Nairobi. And they also allowed me to connect not just with Nairobi, but to expand my work, to align with other cities, 5 cities across the world. That's Sacramento, Seattle, Bogota, and Chennai. My mission working with Cities Rise now is to create safe spaces and transform the narrative to create mental health friendly cities. And the results of our work over the past 3 years as teaming up has been able to reach an upward of 100,000 young people in Nairobi. And this is how we are creating mental health friendly cities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you so much for the important work you're doing. So thank you. We have 2 more speakers left. I saw there are some questions in the Q&A, so we're going to hear for the next 2 speakers, and then we will have a little bit of time for discussion. So we're now going to Bogota, and we will hear from our next speaker, Maria. You are unmuted, so Feel free, the stage is yours.
Awesome. So, hola, hello from Colombia. I'm really glad to be here. I'm volunteer and coordinator of Fundación Cerros de Bogotá, a 10-year-old organization behind the Eastern Hills becoming a healthy, green, and wild corridor. So, since our Park City Rangers are in London, let me take you all across the Atlantic Ocean to South America, then to Colombia, the place where the Andes splits into 3 gorgeous mountain ranges. And right there, Bogota is settled. And if we zoom in once again, we will soon see our natural private reserve. Right there is one of the spots in Bogota City where civil society is experimenting and doing fantastic work. So this private reserve is not an isolated vision, is not an isolated dream for us. We consider this is a pilot project of what the National Supreme Tribunal ruled back in 2013. This is the creation of a recreational, social, and ecological corridor for all Bogotanas and Bogotanos to enjoy. However, today, 2020, we're still lacking that political will and impulse to implement such a strategy. So this is much more than the sum of independent trails, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that trails are bad for people. I'm just saying that this particular corridor demands a comprehensive vision, one that on one hand tackles local particularities and use them as a strength, but also one that can have the big picture. And this is to design a massive urban protected area in a city of 8 million inhabitants. So here is our 3-hectare piece of heaven. This is the private reserve for public use. This is a very nice experiment, and I would love to listen to your advices on how we can make it financially sustainable, please. And we want to emphasize this public use idea because most of the hills are actually private property. And we want to show that restoring the mountain from private efforts is possible. And we want people to find inspiration from our work and follow our example. So these are some of the examples on how we are trying to bring our vision to a specific place in the mountains. So here are some photos of our ecological restoration processes, solid waste management activities. We are a platform to share and create knowledge together in so many disciplines and taking into account many different systems of knowledge and many other activities. So the take-home message here, this is really important. So none of this would have been possible without our friends and communities. They have shared their time, their knowledge, their passion with us, just on the basis of generosity. And for that, we are deeply, deeply grateful. And lastly, so the question is, okay, this is already happening. So Bogota, why not? Bogota, what if we make this socio-ecological corridor of 52 kilometers? So thank you so much for having me here. Please do follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and if you resonate with our vision, please support us and spread the word. Thank you, Flori, Daniel, everyone behind this.
Thank you, Maria. Lovely photos. It's always amazing to see the before and after, and definitely let us know how we can support you and how we can spread the word. And now we're going to move on to our final speaker, Mark, and we're going back to Johannesburg. So Mark, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm founder of MSSA, and we are working with the city of Johannesburg to ecologically restore it. You can go next slide. So Johannesburg, before the city came, was an amazing grassland full of these migratory species. So imagine the Serengeti, but with things like springbok, black wildebeest, zebra, eland. Next slide. Johannesburg sits as this border between the ecotones of grassland in the south and savanna in the north. Next slide. And it's a very young city, less than 150 years old. Grassland was transformed into one of the most important cities in Africa. Next slide. Johannesburg was founded on mining, specifically gold mining. And that yellow line is kind of this mining belt of residue that's still part of the city, from which the city grew from. Next slide. Today, the city struggled with acid mine drainage, which is really polluted water that comes up from the ground in these old mines full of uranium, heavy metals like iron, copper. Next slide. I still find the mine dumps quite beautiful. They're some of the largest in the world. And because of the price of gold, they've started to be remined, opening up these amazing open spaces for the city to use. Next slide. Johannesburg's got a lot of problems. This is just informal settlement in Alexandra. A lot of it's done without any permission, but mainly people need jobs. We need to start developing a new economic system outside of mining. Next slide. This is contrasted with the largest man-made forest in the world. And as you can see, there's still these precious areas of grassland left in the city. Next slide. So we've started with a study that takes the anthropogenic forest, which is about 20 square kilometers, and connects it with critical biodiversities, which is the red. Next slide. We've broken that into goals for the city. So that's structured around the circular vehicular highway, which you'll see there. The yellow is the mine dumps, which are part of a wildlife corridor that we'll speak about just now. Next slide. So we've got afforestation in the south, restoring rivers in the north, and then connecting the critical biodiversities with wildlife corridors. Next slide. How do you bring back grassland at a large scale? In Africa, you need large mammals that migrate through the space. Next slide. So we've designed an elephant migration route that takes the overpopulation of elephants in the Kruger National Park and allows them to migrate through cities such as Johannesburg to help with urban sprawl restrictions. Next slide. This is just the hydrological cycle of acid mine drainage. Next slide. And how elephants can start to restore the soil layers, as well as what we're providing is a water purification and infrasound tower that purifies the water to drinking quality. These towers are quite amazing. They use infrasound to attract elephants along this route as kind of a calling card. Next slide. And that's what we're doing in Johannesburg.
Wow, thank you so much, Mark, and beautiful presentation, beautiful illustration. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this is the end. We've heard from all the speakers. It's been amazing. I definitely learned new things as well today. I hope you did too. And we have just 5 minutes left. There was one question from Dorothy, saying there has been mention of how these some of these projects save money as well as making life better for us all. But what sort of models are people using to demonstrate the financial benefits and savings for the authorities? Dorothy added that there is a model from the New Economics Foundation called Social Return on Investment. So they're asking if it's familiar and if people have used it to demonstrate value. I would say that whoever would like to take this question from our panelists, feel free to let us know. You can put if you can't unmute yourself, you can use the raise hand function and then I can unmute you. But if any of you would like to talk about measuring impact. Anyone? No? We had a question for Joe as well. Unfortunately, Joe had to leave. We did have a question for Maria. So can you not go to schools on a regular basis to do talks about the work you are doing? Nice photos.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We actually are part of a network of schools in Bogota City, around 100 schools of promoting Bogota's biodiversity. So yeah, we do have sessions, outdoor sessions for school in our reserve.
Thank you very much, Maria. And I've just noticed that Elise is with us from the Planetary Emergency Partnership. So Elise, if you're happy to have the final word before we wrap up this event, I will unmute you now. And over to you.
Thank you. And I don't know, my camera is not working, but anyway, I wanted to support your project because I think it's such an amazing idea to bring hope to people with real projects and solutions on the ground. I'm actually facilitating the Planetary Emergency Partnership, and the head of the London National Park City is part of that. So I just wanted to share a very quick experience we've had with the TEDx Countdown launch. I don't know if some of you were part of it on the 10th of October. It was really inspiring because it was a global movement for climate action. The idea was to turn big ideas into action, and we hosted an online citizens forum on climate action in my hometown here in Switzerland. And I would just encourage all of you here on this call to actually host a TEDx event in the coming month, to do that, to bring in the science and all these exciting solutions from the international work that we're doing with the Planetary Emergency Partnership, Johan Rockström from the Potsdam Institute, and Christiana Figueres and many others, but really connect that with local action and having a dialogue, a very interactive dialogue with citizens in your city to actionate these ideas and to scale up solutions. So for us, it was very interesting to see that citizens were ready to make radical changes in their lifestyles. I think maybe also with COVID-19, there's this readiness to make changes, to use the bike more than cars and buses, to buy local food at the local farm. So it's a very difficult time for all of us with the pandemic, but it's also a time of change and of hope for how we can actually rebuild the world and emerge from this emergency with a truly systemic transformation for climate, people, and nature. So that's all I wanted to share. I'm really sorry that I was late for this call with the time change. Plus, I was facilitating this other call before anyway. But thanks for hosting this amazing day. I mean, I looked at your list. It's impressive, all these speakers. So keep up what you're doing. Just a word of courage for everyone to go through these difficult times, but to continue to move forward with this systemic transformation that we all want. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elise. And don't worry, you know what they say, better late than never. So we're very happy to have you here. And luckily we recorded the session, so you can definitely catch up on the previous talks as well whenever you have time. So this being said, we're coming to an end. I really enjoyed hosting this event. I hope you really enjoyed being here. We have a comment from Paddy saying that was great. All of the speakers did a fantastic job. And it's really encouraging to see so many passionate people making the world a better place. So thank you from all our hearts for all the work you're doing. And it's nice to see we're all part of the same movement, trying to make the world a better place. We will be running our third session in exactly 4.5 hours. So for those of you who can join that session as well, we're looking forward to have you there. Thank you again to all the speakers. We will try to connect you as well, and hopefully each and every panelist as well as attendee took something out of today, a learning, an inspiration, or maybe an idea for a new project. Thank you very much. Stay connected with us, and we'll see you very soon. Bye, everyone, and a big round of applause.